This is the way losers acting around misfits. Pound for pound, I'm the listing. You can bounce and get dismissed. Clown, get this. Couldn't walk a mile wearing my Fitbit. Competition is non-existent.
Hey, so how is every episode of AEW Dynamite the best episode of AEW Dynamite? I think I will try to answer that question this week on my AEW Dynamite, aka Fight for the Fallen review. So let's get into it. July the 28th, 2021. So we start the show with this awesome introduction for Hangman Page. You know, what does it mean to be a cowboy? That's the question. That's the theme of this thing. And we see the Dark Order there and Hangman Page is there. And they go through all these heroic traits. It's like, you're never too busy to lend a hand to a friend. You know, you dust yourself off and you get back up when you fall down. These sorts of manly man, heroic tropes. And this was hot. This was hot. They started great. Hangman Page and the Dark Order all come out. They're wearing purple and black. And everybody's in. I have to tell you, for a second I was in. I was like, all right. They're doing something big with Hangman. It felt huge. It felt like they were really going to make, this was going to be a star-making performance. Hangman and Dark Order is in the ring. Everything is looking hunky-dory. I'm like, okay. Surprise, surprise. Then we get basketball themes. I'm like, what is going on here? And then we see the Elite. They're being introduced like a basketball team, one at a time. And they're wearing basketball jerseys. And I'm like, what is going on? Then they start dribbling the basketballs. I'm like, what? Why? I didn't look at the shirts. It wasn't until I saw the Elite Squad banner that they ran and broke through like a college football team that I said to myself, oh shit, this is a Space Jam advertising. And, okay, but, I don't get it. Look, I guess I do get it. There's supposed to be a team. It's a Space Jam thing. But this was corny. This was super corny. After how cool everything with Hangman was, they came with this. And this is what they rocked with. It's putting Kenny Omega in basketball shorts and a basketball tank top. And I was just kind of like, I was just shaking my head. And I noticed that he was wearing the number 23. You know, that's the number for Michael Jordan. I get that. But I was just kind of dumbfounded that that's the way we was going to do the Space Jam introductions. You know, we're going to do the Space Jam thing. And I was just kind of like, oh my God. And then they did some horrible dribbling. They don't even have handles. I mean, it's complete white boy basketball. I mean, Kenny Omega looks like he looks like that kid that was counting the dribbling from Ted DiBiase. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What comes after 6? It was pathetic. It was awful. And I was told that AEW does not insult their fans' intelligence. That's what I was told. I was told that AEW has a smart fan base and they can figure things out on their own. They don't need you to tell them. You know, somebody explain this to me. Outside of it being a 20-minute advertisement for Space Jam, what the point of this was. Okay? Nothing. There is no point. It's absolute butt fuckery. It's stupid. Okay? All right, so let's get into the match itself. Stu Grayson cracked his head open. Doing a flippity-doo outside the ring. Nobody decided to catch him. Everybody fell down because that's what you're supposed to do. Instead of falling down because the guy hit you, they fell down because that's what you're supposed to do. And then he, bopped his head on the goddamn ground. Now, he ended up finishing the match, of course. On Twitter, he claimed he did not have a concussion, but I wonder if he really doesn't have a concussion, or does he not have a concussion like Matt Hardy didn't have a concussion? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, right? That's the question I have to ask. But then again, I don't give a fuck about Stu Grayson anyway. So if he cracked his fucking egghead open, who cares? So the orders of elimination. Alex Reynolds was eliminated first for the Dark Order. Anderson was eliminated first for the Elite. Gallows and Grayson went to a double countout. Evil Uno was eliminated third for the Dark Order. Nick Jackson was eliminated by Hangman Page for the Elite. John Silver was eliminated, and then Hangman Page was eliminated. So Hangman Page fought the Elite by himself, Omega and the Bucks. He only eliminated one of them, which was Nick Jackson, or was it Matt Jackson? Who cares? And he lost. Therefore, he lost his title shot. So because his title shot was on the line in this match, and he lost it, and we just kind of went over that. Like we kept going. We didn't even stop. We just kept going. We didn't even talk about how wow, what's going to happen now? What do we do now? Nope, just keep moving. Find something else. And this killed the crowd because the crowd was so hot for Hangman. This killed the crowd. The crowd was never as loud as they were for Hangman Page. Now, they got up for other people, sure. But this was the hottest the crowd was for all night. Especially when Hangman and Omega was in the ring together. This was the hottest they had been all night. And then they built up Hangman Page, gave him that great entrance, and then beat him. Clean in the middle of the ring. Well, as clean as possible. It's not illegal what they did. It was elimination style. And so now the big question is, how are we going to circle around to get Page back to being the number one contender? I don't know. Or if that's even the case. Okay? All I know is people uncritically just accepted that Hangman Page lost and are willing to move on. And that's what I mean by what I said before. And I remember saying this and people got on my back about it. I'm not sure Hangman Page is somebody people actually care about. Well, I know the fans do. But there's people who are just cheering him because they're putting him in the ring and he's friends with the Elite and he's been there for a long time and everybody knows he's the heir apparent because they basically told you that before the first fucking episode that, at one point we're going to make a big star out of Hangman Page. So people are just going along with it. They're not asking questions about how they plan to do that. Having him be a drunk, having him play second fiddle for Kenny Omega for nearly a year. Him being a drunk and being the riding horse for goddamn Dark Order. Now he put his title shot on the line, believing in the Dark Order, and lost. And we're just still trusting the plan. It feels we're trusting the plan. We're trusting the long-term vision of the Booker of the Year. We're just trusting him. Come on, man. I can't believe this. And the ability for people to just move on makes me question whether people actually care about Hangman Page or not. I do. Because there are people who people really legitimately don't care about, that if they lose, it's a big deal. But Hangman Page, who was supposed to be the top babyface on the company, gets beat in the middle of the ring, loses his title shot, and people are just kind of like, oh, what a great match that was, right? I mean, it was a great match. It was so much fun. It's like they didn't even plant a seed to how he could get his title shot back. We don't even... Okay, whatever. I can fully understand that maybe he's going to get the title shot anyway, which is probably what will happen. But this was WWE style stuff right here, man. They built this guy up just to kill him. They built him up just to kill him. So I don't know. It was dumb. Moving on, we get Alex Marvez and Pac. The Lucha Brothers was supposed to be there, but they weren't there. Pac says that the Lucha Brothers, they had some trouble with their car. This led Chavo Guerrero and Andrade to appear and said that their people are going to bring the Lucha Brothers in. And then Andrade, whose English is so bad that my subtitles on the TV couldn't keep up with what he said. The gist of it that I was able to catch is that you need to treat your people better or they'll find someone who will. I think that's what he said, but I had to turn my TV up and rewind it. So it was pretty bad, okay? That was pretty bad. So we got Ricky Stark's big celebration, and he got to stand in the ring and cut a promo, which I hate that he's carrying around that fake, stupid belt that doesn't mean anything. But, he's still being represented by Taz. We haven't fully explained why Taz even cares about Ricky Starks. Like, Taz is a street dude, tough guy. Ricky Starks, I mean, after all these months, nobody really even questioned or explained why Starks is the guy with them. He doesn't fit with them. You know, Ricky Starks fits in the Pinnacle. You know, he's kind of too dapper to be hanging out with Team Taz. Like, Hook fits a little bit. He got a little bit of street in him. Will Hobbs is perfect. You know, Brian Cage, you know, okay. But Ricky Starks is kind of like a pretty boy. Like, you know, he wears loafers with no socks. Like, why? How is that? Like, when you look at like the concept of Taz or Team Taz or Taz's dojo or whatever, and who Taz was when he was in ECW, you don't think he would hang out with a guy like Ricky Starks. He may be, you know, cool with him, but I don't see Taz taking that great of an interest in Ricky Starks. In any event, Ricky Starks rips Brian Cage, rightfully so, and he should, because Brian Cage sucks. Says that he's been covering for Cage's F-ups, and that, you know, he was the anchor, the glue of the group. There was a brass band with the trombone and all that kind of stuff. Then he claimed that he forgives a lot. But one thing he couldn't forgive is that when he broke his neck, Brian Cage didn't check up on him. So he can't forgive that. He can forgive a lot of things, all of the screw-ups, all of the mess-ups, he can forgive. But he can't forgive that. Can't forgive you not giving him a phone call when his neck was broken. You weren't a good pal. So he then ripped Cage again, says that, you know, I'm a real star, and even putting you next to me, you couldn't rub any of your charisma off. You couldn't rub any of my charisma off on you. And, you know, I'm a star. You've been trying to figure it out for 17 years or something like that. And I just instantly, like, you can't tell me Brian Cage been in the business for 17 years. Like, the worst veterans I've ever seen has been in AEW. You know, I'm talking like people with 10 years plus of experience that are still look green. And that's where you get the whole concept where people say green is not experience or green is not age. Green is a mindset. You know, like I remember the first time I ever heard that. Oh God, I watch so many interviews and read so many books and stuff like that. Sometimes I don't remember where I get things from. But I do remember seeing people say like green is a mindset, that you can be in the business for a long time and still be green. And I think that's Brian Cage. Anyway, Brian Cage ran to the ring and beat up the brass band and broke the trombone. And we were told there were no trombones in wrestling, which we know is a lie because we had the New Day for 5 years now, 6 years now, 7 years now. Since what, 2013 maybe? Maybe 8 years now. And they get over trombones pretty well. At one point, Ricky Starks yelled at the crowd because they were telling that they couldn't hear him, and he didn't care. He kept going, which is smart. You know, if AEW sound is fucked up, let them figure it out. You know, you don't stop doing what you're doing. Good heel stuff. Then we got pitched to Hiroshi Tanahashi, you know, the ace of the universe, who essentially just says he wants to challenge the winner of the United States Championship match on his show. Later in this show, since we're talking about Hiroshi Tanahashi, Jon Moxley talked about, you know, how the forbidden door is open. And now you see all these guys coming in from Japan, but he tried to get into Japan when he was the United States champion to defend his title, and he couldn't get in. They weren't letting him in. But as soon as he loses the title, all of a sudden these guys are now coming to challenge for the United States title. And he feels like that these guys are trying to duck him. So he's talking about this forbidden door is open, but you're not going to like what's inside. So they're teasing Jon Moxley versus Hiroshi Tanahashi. They're teasing maybe even a Jon Moxley heel turn. It seems that they've run out of gas on Jon Moxley already. He hasn't even been a babyface that long. Well, I guess technically he has been a babyface for about a year or so. I love Hiroshi Tanahashi. You know, Hiroshi. Is it Hiroshi? It's Hiroshi. I know him by his last name. I can never remember his fucking first name. Because there's so many Hiroyoshis and Hiroshis in Japan. Fuck. But I know the ace. I know the ace for sure. But I love Tanahashi. I hate that they're wasting him on Dynamite. He's going to be wrestling, apparently, Lance Archer. Because Lance Archer defeated Hikuleo in a match that was the shits. I mean, let's be honest. It was boring as shit, and nobody cared. Nobody cared. Nobody knew who Hikuleo was. People popped for the finish because it was the finish. People popped for Haku because he's Haku. He's a badass. And he's Hikuleo's dad. So we popped for him. But other than that, we were kind of like, who cares about this? Nobody cares about this. So, whatever. I'm excited to see Tanahashi. If it's Tanahashi versus Moxley, ought to be interesting. I don't buy into it that heavily because I know Moxley. I saw Moxley in Japan. It wasn't good. It was not good. So whatever. All right, so let's back up a bit. FTR versus Santana and Ortiz. This is where we got our second injury of the evening, where Cash Wheeler apparently cracked his arm open. I don't know if there was bone showing or if it was just a cut. But the match essentially was over for him the moment the injury took place. And Santana and Ortiz lost. Santana and Ortiz lost. Why? Why did they lose? Why did they lose? Are they ever going to be the tag team champions? Are they ever going to be stars? Are they ever going to be anything in this company? Or are they just jobber to the stars permanently? Because I really like Santana and Ortiz. I think that they have something. The both of them. They really have, especially together. Santana is great. But they have been beaten like paste throughout their entire run in AEW. Babyface or heel. It's just not working. The match itself was fine, I guess, up to the injury. It never reached the point of being the match of the night, which is what I expected it to be. This was the only match on the show I was excited for. And it was pretty flat. And Ortiz just gets pinned with a brain buster. I was so disappointed. Disappointed. Oh. Well, it pretty much ended my night. Okay? I gotta tell you. My night was pretty much over right there. So, Britt Baker cut a promo. She talked about how Nyla Rose breaks bitches. And she's the baddest bitch and she can't be broken. And that, Reba has been proven to not be able to protect her because she keeps getting injured in these matches. So now she's going to have to bring in somebody to protect her. So they're utilizing that Britt Baker gets injured every time she goes out there as part of her storyline. But now we're going to use that. We're going to use that as part of the storyline to bring in a bodyguard, which of course makes no fucking difference because she keeps getting injured for real in matches for real. Okay? This is not a work. It's not like, hey, random people keep jumping Britt Baker and it's all a work and Reba is the shits at helping. No, it is, she's legitimately wrestling matches and getting her arm broken and getting her nose busted and getting her leg taken out from under her. I mean, it's constant with Britt Baker. It's constant. It's a shame. I remember, was it Britt Baker? No, it was Tegan Knox. I was about to say which one of them. I remember doing a running gag, or at least just a gag, and saying which one was going to get injured first, Chelsea Green or Tegan Knox. I think technically Chelsea Green won that race because she got put back in her cast. I don't think she re-broke it. I just think her doctor put her cast back on. So I guess we got to add Britt Baker to this thing. It's going to be like the Olympics. It's going to be like the Women's Injury Olympics. Who's going to get injured first? Britt Baker, Tegan Knox, or Chelsea Green? We're going to start from today. Who's going to get injured first? My bet is on Britt Baker. Leave your bet in the comment section below. If there's any other women, maybe Chris Statlander. I don't think Chris Statlander has been injury prone. But Britt Baker is definitely in the pool because every other match she works, she gets hurt, pretty much. Who her bodyguard could be is probably going to be some type of legend because they like bringing those guys in now. But I have no idea who it could possibly be, and I really don't care. Let's see. Alex Marvez was with Sting and Darby Allin, and this is important because Darby Allin essentially said the only place you can prove that you're the greatest, that you're the best in the world is in AEW. And people lost their shit because it's a CM Punk tease. And they were like, CM Punk versus Darby Allin. And I was like, okay. It's interesting. It's CM Punk versus somebody I've never seen before, if that's what they're going to go with. Then it's at least somebody fresh, somebody I've never seen him wrestle before. But it's obviously going to be somebody that's even smaller than CM Punk. And CM Punk is not big. But Darby Allin is a child. You know, like literally a little boy. If he can get his shit in, it ought to be okay. Darby Allin doesn't have the greatest of promo skills. So maybe are we working towards CM Punk versus Sting? You know, that interests me a lot more than it should, if we're being honest. That interests me a lot more than Darby Allin versus CM Punk. You know, and you know, it ought to be interesting. We'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes. But I like there were several CM Punk references on this show. And they had better hope that this CM Punk thing really pulls through. They seem like to be betting the house on it. Look, I don't have a lot of time here, but I want to make sure people understand everything has a budget and everything has a limit. If this CM Punk thing, this gambit, does not work, and I'm not talking about it works for 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, they're gonna have to get at least a year or two out of CM Punk in order for this thing to officially have worked. That means they're going to have to keep that miserable bastard happy for at least a year in order to justify even bringing him in. Okay? I don't see him staying relevant for a year because the bloom is going to be off the rose within 6 months. You know, even if you have him wrestle Kenny Omega, you can have him wrestle. And then the more you do that kind of stuff, the quicker you're going to burn it out, if we're being honest. You know? So they had better hope that works. They had better. Now, Daniel Bryan, well, I think that if Daniel Bryan is watching this show, I think he's going to see his future in Christian. So let's go into that next thing. I know I'm skipping something. I'll come back to it. So Christian and the Jurassic Express, Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus, defeated HFO, Private Party, and Helico in a match that nobody cared about. There was a quadruple German suplex in this match. It was just a joke. Private Party were wearing like the old school Hardy Boys gear. This match was a joke. It was stupid. Christian just is not doing anything. And I remember somebody in my comment section said that Christian's never going to be in the ring with Marco Stunt. He was in the ring with Marco Stunt this week. Well, Marco Stunt was outside the ring. He was party to this nonsense. After the match, the Blade punches out Christian, just flattens him. And I just said, hey, this is long-term booking, guys. Long-term booking. We brought Christian in, teased him going for the world title. We'll get there eventually, but first he's got to pay. He got to pay his dues. I mean, who did he ever beat? What did he ever do? He's got to pay his dues. You bring a guy in, tout him as a legend, and then treat him like some job guy. He's got to pay his dues. He's got to wrestle Private Party and the Blade. He's got to pay his dues. He's got to prove himself to the AEW faithful. What? I hope Daniel Bryan is watching because he's next on the Summer Jam screen when it comes to this. All right, let's back up a little bit. So we got Cody and Malachi Black. They get into a fight. Why? I don't know. Cody was in the back. He was doing Cody things at the let's be respectful and call it the Dusty position. And then Malachi Black just attacked him out of nowhere and beat him up. And then hit him. You know, they brawled outside from backstage to the ring area, and then he hit him with like a knee strike and put him down. Some masked J Brown got involved and got black masked. Then Aleister Black, or Malachi Black, I'm sorry, says to him, "Welcome to the House of Black." And he said some other things, but I couldn't hear him. Okay. Does anybody know what they're feuding for? Well, they're feuding obviously because he kicked Cody in the head. You know, he kicked Arn Anderson in the head. But why did he do that? There's been at least 3 or 4 weeks where they could have explained what Malachi Black's beef with Cody is. They have not done that. They have not even attempted to do that. They're just having a match to have a match. They're just mad at each other because, well, Black has to fight somebody and Cody needs something to do. You know, but I was told that they do long form storytelling and they do great stories and that you don't need to have your hand held. It's like, hey, I've been watching WWE, I've been watching wrestling in general. I've been consuming all sorts of stories, as has everybody since I was a kid. You know, even when you are not conscious of what you're absorbing stories. Nobody is asking the question, what the fuck are these guys fighting for? There's nothing on the line. There's no promos where they're talking about, and I guess they're going to put together some video package or something like that to explain it right before the match happens. But they have had weeks and weeks and weeks of TV to explain what is going on in this story, and there has not been a drop or even an attempt at telling a story with Malachi Black and Cody. They're just wearing black suits and white suits. Does Cody wear a white suit every week now? Does he only have white suits now? Is he going to change the color of his suit when this feud is over? Or is it going to be one of those Cody one match feuds and then that's it? We're going to put Malachi Black on dark. You know, I mean, imagine being that guy. I'm pretty sure he can pay so much he doesn't care anymore. But imagine being that guy. You complained, you were mad that WWE wasn't really using you, putting you on the bench. Now AEW has had you on the bench for almost 2 months now. Because he debuted over a month ago, right? So he debuted in June, didn't he? June, right? So it's been about a month, right? So it ain't been 2 months. Malachi Black, and we're already talking about moving on. We're not, the hype for his match is not matched by the hype for the potential of CM Punk showing up or Daniel Bryan. And they announced these things right around the same time. Like I'm sure he doesn't care because he's getting paid. So I'm sure he doesn't give a shit. But all the people who wanted him there so badly have suddenly forgotten that he was even there. Funny how that works when you operate off hype. Miro talked about beating up on Lee Johnson. I made some people upset this week when I made that joke too. I made a joke about how Tony Khan goes on these wrestling websites, again, who uncritically follow him and everything that he says, and talks about how, title matches are really earned in AEW. You should have to earn a title match. We don't give title matches away. I mean, back when I was watching Mid-South Wrestling as a kid, I'm like, what? Tony Khan is my age. There's no way he was watching Mid-South Wrestling as a kid. There's no way. Okay, there's no way. Unless he was getting tapes. Maybe if he was getting tapes. I think he might have been a tape trader, right? But the likelihood of him watching Mid-South Wrestling as a kid is unlikely. He probably watched it on the network or something. In any event, that's where he based his, you have to earn a title match. For starters, that wasn't always true. I watched a lot of Mid-South Wrestling too, and I saw guys come in and get title matches, essentially. And it didn't mean anything. The North America, they had no world title because they weren't in the NWA. When they needed to rep the world title, when they were in, having dire straits, they could get it because they were friendly and they recognized it as the world title and they didn't try to compete. But they didn't have their own world title. In any event, Mid-South, there wasn't that much emphasis put on earning a title shot. I think he's creating mythology. In any event, he's talking about how title matches are earned in AEW. And I just thought about it. I was like, what did Brian Pillman do to get a title shot? And then I'm like, oh, Miro's going to be wrestling Lee Johnson. What the fuck did Lee Johnson do? Well, he almost cracked his fucking head open, doing a spinning whoopie-doo on Dark and jammed his, DDT'd himself on the mat. Is that what you have to do to get a title shot? I guess Stu Grayson is next. So Miro says that, he's God's favorite champion. His wife is double jointed and he has a vengeful God. And okay. You see what they're doing with Miro? Why can't they do that with Aleister Black? Why can't they have him cut promos and explain why he's feuding with Cody? No. To be quite honest, WWE failed Malachi Black, quote unquote. he cut more promos there than he has in AEW. You know, and I'm talking about even those days when he was just sitting in the dark room, cutting promos, talking about wanting to fight people. You know, at least there was something there. You know, there's nothing to this Malachi Black thing. And we're not even getting an explanation to why he's still selling the eye injury. You know, we're not getting an explanation to that either. So this nothing. Who cares? Who cares? I'm wasting time on stuff that don't matter. All right, so Thunder Rosa beats Julia Hart. Griff Garrison and Brian Pillman turned into the Spirit Squad to cheer for her. It was embarrassing. So Nick fucking Gage. Okay. So Nick Gage basically says to Chris Jericho, what are you going to do that hasn't been done to me before? You're going to be in pain for the rest of your life. Then we get the match. Nick Gage versus Chris Jericho. No rules. The second labor of Jericho. Not going to lie to you guys. Jericho did a lot more than I thought he would. That's just being honest. I didn't think he was going to take the pizza cutter. Didn't think they were going to be able to do the fluorescent light tubes. I thought they were going to avoid all that shit. Jericho did it. He even did the glass. He didn't go through the pain of glass. He made sure Gage did that first. But he even did glass. So he did Gage's shit. And it reminded me so much of Ric Flair versus Big Show from an ECW episode. You know, when Ric Flair was in his 50s, he had no business working matches. And they were doing death matches with him. Like, he went and did the match with Big Show. And then he did the bloody brawl with Mick Foley at SummerSlam. You know, those were weird days. You know, that was the weird days. Nobody's going to remember that from Ric Flair's history. Everybody's going to remember his, the 80s and the 90s. Nobody's going to remember when Ric Flair was old and wrinkly and rolling around in thumbtacks. Nobody's going to remember that shit. You know, when Ric Flair dies, it's all going to be about the robes and the NWA Championship. It's not going to be at all about thumbtacks and barbed wire baseball bats. But he did do that stuff too. And that's what happens when you're down in your 50s and you physically can't go anymore. You start doing spectacles, And it is what it is. Jericho went out there and this match was what it was. I think it exposed Nick Gage quite a bit as a guy who is obviously not that big. He's not big at all. And he can't really throw a punch at all. I watched him. He couldn't really even throw a punch. I think being on national TV exposed him. He got little to no reaction when he came out. Justin Roberts did the best he could when it comes to the Nick Gage entrance, as far as reciting the entrance, because you can't cuss, but he didn't add the energy that usually have. But it shows a lot. This is like when people talked about Karrion Kross entrance and him not having Scarlet and him not having the smoke machine. That's what this was for Nick Gage. They just had a guy walk down to the ramp and get in the ring. That's really what it was. When you see Nick Gage come to the ring in GCW, it's him with the crowd. They're going back and forth and they're pushing each other and shoving each other and they're, roughing each other up and they hyping each other up. And that's that closeness, that relationship he got with that audience that makes him feel like he's a huge star. This just makes him feel like a guy, a guy who does death matches. It made him feel weirdly normal, It looked like Chris Jericho was wrestling, a drunk mechanic. And it's unfortunate, It was similar with the Sandman, when they took Sandman's entrance away. He's just a guy, And that's really why the entrances sometimes will get you fooled. People think that this guy's a big deal because of an entrance. Like, if your entrance is everything, then you're nothing. And there's a certain energy and a certain mentality that goes with the Nick Gage entrance that really lacked here. And he didn't get a huge reaction. Now, of course, it got over because it's a violent spectacle in which Jericho is getting his head stabbed with the end of fluorescent light tubes and getting his head cut with pizza cutters. So surely these people were kind of like, oh, okay, wow, that's crazy. So after the pizza slicer and stabbing each other in the head with fluorescent light tubes and baseball bats and everything, the finish comes with a back elbow. That, you heard it, folks. A spinning back flab to the face onto the glass. And Nick Gage, hardcore deathmatch icon, the king, the god of this shit, does the JOB. Embarrassing. Gotta give Jericho credit for doing more than I thought he would, but ultimately, who cares? So Nick Gage was completely exposed as being mostly a gimmick. It's mostly an entrance and a match type. You know, outside of this particular match type, I don't see him being any type of crossover success or being any type of, mainstream wrestler. It's not like Eddie Kingston. And I think that's what a lot of people thought that it was going to be. Like Nick Gage was going to be like another Eddie Kingston. And while he has a certain charisma to him, I'm talking about Nick Gage, he doesn't seem to have the crossover appeal that a guy like Eddie Kingston has. And he just doesn't. He comes across as a angry little man without all the gimmicks, and without that, it's like when people take Sandman out of ECW. It's like, did he ever have any success outside of ECW? No. It's just a tailor-made thing for that audience. And I think sometimes Tony Khan probably needs to be smartened up into that concept to where certain things don't go certain ways. It's like what's weird things that people put on pizza. I saw somebody put dill pickle on pizza. Like if your show is a wrestling show and you want to have a little something for everybody, which is what they're actually going for when it comes to AEW. Still, there's going to be people who are going to look at this and say, "You putting dill pickles on pizza? What is this shit?" And they're not down for that. To the next point I want to make before I talk about the next labor of Jericho is that I'm surprised that TNT is letting them get away with all this stuff. TNT hasn't changed that much. In fact, corporate America hasn't changed that much at all either. I would not be surprised if in the long term this doesn't become a problem, because they are starting to have death matches essentially every week. It's like barbed wire and glass and people getting cut and stabbed and stuff every single week. Eventually, this is going to catch up with them. Eventually this is going to catch up. And this is one of the things that I think that, Eric Bischoff did a video, talked about this in on his show, and how he doesn't think that the Nick Gage style is good for pro wrestling. He doesn't think it's good for the business. And I absolutely agree. I think that it's terrible. And I think it's been proven that it's terrible. You can go back, and I was going to do a separate video on this, but I mean, why? I'll give a little bit a hint right here. Corporate America does not like deathmatch wrestling. They don't really like pro wrestling at all. It's a fact. It's well-known fact. People don't. I mean, it's been since the 80s. That's why Vince McMahon created the concept of sports entertainment. It's to get away from the fakeness, the phoniness, the carniness. Even though all that stuff still exists. The brawling, the blood, the people slicing themselves, all that kind of stuff. To get away from all that stuff. That's why sports entertainment exists. That's why WWE has always targeted families and children and tried to avoid all of the blood and stuff, with the exception of the Attitude Era. When you look at the WWF and the entire history of it, for 2 or 3 years was the only time they went as hard as they do they have been on blood and guts and stuff like that, and the sex and the violence and all that kind of stuff. They only did it for a few years. When you compare the Hogan years to what everybody was doing in the NWA and all the bloody brawls that Flair was having, they were operating in a different space up there in New York, with the different sponsorships. I am definitely surprised that TNT is letting AEW get away with this stuff. And something telling me it won't last forever. And that's one of the things that, and people say, well, AEW's got a lot of momentum right now. And I say, well, they do. Bubba Ray Dudley is talking about, well, there's nobody putting on an exciting show like this. I say, well, a lot of it is hype. A lot of it is hype for, we think this guy's coming in, we think that guy's coming in. All this stuff has a limitation. Once you sign CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, which I hope they do, then you will actually have to start building stories and stop, trying to chase the next high. Once somebody puts the hammer down and says, yeah, no more of this deathmatch bullshit, no more stabbing each other with fluorescent light tubes, somebody's actually going to have to, learn how to work. And then, we're going to expose all these people who don't know what the fuck they're doing. And they've just been hiding them by putting them in death matches and all kind of other weird stuff. Like that. Eventually, this road will come to an end. They're probably going to let them get away with this and let them establish the brand. And eventually they're going to start fucking with it. I mean, it's just inevitable. When you have a train that's running the way the AEW's is, I really do can think about what they're going to do next. As far as when they can't do the stuff that they're doing now. And Tony Khan you can talk about Tony Khan being a billionaire all you want. It's not the point. There are still companies with budgets. There are still going to be a lot, and they're eventually going to get tired of paying for things themselves. They're going to want other people's money to pay for things. And then you're going to have a difficult time if, selling people on your product if they look and they see that, there's people being stabbed with fluorescent light tubes and forks and shit. There's definitely going to be a difficult time there. So I'm surprised TNT is letting them get away with it. We'll see how much longer they let them get away with it. But before we get out of here, let's talk about the next labor of Jericho. The next labor of Jericho will be next week, August the 4th, and his match will be against Juventud Guerrera, and he has to win the match with a top rope move. My God, the juice is loose. The juice is free. Juicy, juicy, juicy. My God, look, man, I'm a huge mark for Juvi. I know he's not going to be the same guy he was when he was 21 or whatever he was in WCW. He was super young. For the younger audiences, and this is why, when they talk about having a young demo in AEW, if you are 30, you don't know who Juventud Guerrera is, right? You have no idea. You probably saw him riding a lawnmower on SmackDown, maybe. But, you don't really know who that is, So... but if you're 35, 36 and above, you saw Juvi on Nitro having bangers with Ray, having bangers with Dean Malenko, and you're excited about this. And, that's good. That's excellent. I'm all the way down for this. I would have rathered Juvi had been the second one. But, it's probably just going to be Jericho doing a splash from the top rope after a big move or something like that. But Juvi is great. Juvi is fun. It's going to be fun with Juvi. That's about it. So how is every episode of AEW Dynamite the best episode of AEW Dynamite? Well, if you're uncritically watching the show, which a lot of wrestling journalists seem to be. This seems to be a show that's written almost specifically for them, in as much as whatever they like. I'm talking wrestling journalists, they just happen to do it, or they just do it. Also, there's a lot of pandering and a lot of boat rides and different quid pro quo crap that they're doing with AEW. And a lot of people are just completely in the tank for AEW. And there's not a lot of criticism for AEW and their booking decisions. I don't see how you can be okay with them beating Hangman Page tonight. I don't see how you could say that this was a great show when Hikuleo and Lance Archer and Thunder Rosa and Julia Hart, and both of those matches were absolute sleepers. I don't see how you can, and I don't mean sleepers as in a positive, thing. I mean sleepers as in they were boring as shit. I don't see how you could praise this show as being a great show when you have a dude conk his head in the first match and a dude bust his arm open in the second match. And I don't see how you could, look the other way on all these injuries. I don't see how you could do that either. They don't work that often. Like, why are there so many people hurt? I don't see how you could, ignore that there are some people on this roster that have not wrestled on this show in a long time, and they aren't doing anything. And they're constantly bringing in ringers and bringing in guys from New Japan and, and stuff like that. I don't see how you can justify that. I don't see how you can justify signing all these guys and not doing anything with them. I mean, when WWE signs a bunch of guys and doesn't do anything with them, they're wasting talent. When AEW does it, it's a long-term booking plan or something stupid like that. It's nonsense. So that's how every episode of AEW Dynamite is the best, because you're uncritically just consuming. It's just shut up and consume. Don't argue, don't debate, just consume. And I refuse to do that. We don't do that here. We criticize everything. I watch a little bit of everything. I criticize everything. So it may seem to some people that I'm a hater. I started getting called haters in the comment section. Okay, but if I'm a hater, then I hate everything. Because none of this shit is pro wrestling the way that I wanted it to be. I think it should be some fun elements, but I don't want it to be goofy. I don't want it to be silly. I don't want wrestling to be for dorks. And that seems to be the target audience. The target audience is dorks, and I'm good on that. But let me know what you guys think. Like, share, subscribe, donate, and I will talk to you guys later, man. Peace.
Tell me what's worse than learning all that you led to believe was all horse crap. They distort.